Hello and welcome. This is the Zen community of Oregon, making the teachings of the Buddha Dharma accessible to support your practice. New episodes air every week.
I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, and I take refuge in Sangha. Refuge is infinitely deep, and Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha have meanings on many different levels. But one way of really conceptualizing that refuge prayers, we're taking refuge in Buddha, which is awakened nature, our awakened nature, our shared awakened nature. And then taking refuge in Dharma is the awakened nature of all beings. And then taking refuge in Sangha is this community and community, all community, and that can extend to all the ways that our practice is supported and all the beings that we support through our practice and through our living. And then you can see that the three refuges aren't very separate from each other. It's all interconnected. So I have been talking about and exploring, and we've been exploring together this analogy of dream and the dreamlike nature of reality, and how that is a practice of bodhicitta, of cultivating compassion and wisdom for the benefit of all beings. So I want to pick that up again from a slightly different perspective. We're kind of like holding this jewel of the teaching of dream and the dreamlike nature, and we're like looking at different facets of that jewel. So let's start back at the basics. So as human beings, we have some basic assumptions about who we are and about what the world is. Maybe we come into being with these assumptions, or we learn them over the course of our lives. And so we learn this phrase at some point in our lives, I am. Yeah. And we're constantly saying or thinking this simple yet quite impactful phrase. Even maybe during your meditation, you might have noticed the mind saying, I am hungry, I am bored, I am tired, I am restless, I don't want to do this. I'm having a good meditation. So we say, I am, probably hundreds, maybe thousands of times in our mind throughout the day, or think it. Or think it without even saying the words, like the I am is implied. And all the while that we're doing this, often the thought I am or the sensation I am goes unquestioned. It's just assumed. We assume we know what we're referring to. Of course, I'm talking about me here. So we assume and we build our life or our sense of self upon this basic assumption. And sometimes if we start to pay attention, and as part of what we're doing in meditation, and as we build this capacity for mindfulness, as we start to pay attention, we might start to notice that the shape of I am can be at times really painful. We can think some pretty negative or painful things about ourselves. Like, I'm not good enough, I'm bad at this, or the I am can take the shape of different emotions that we experience. Anxiety, fear, shame, desire, anger. And because the I am is often unquestioned, when we have these thoughts or these strong emotions that we associate with my emotions, my feelings, we get totally bought into those thoughts, those sensations, those emotions as being like really who we are. And so we either suffer them or we are kind of trapped in their world. We're trapped in the world that's created through believing them or identifying with them. So in Dharma practice, we're practicing beginning to peer into or look into these basic assumptions that we make about ourselves and reality. So one of the basic inquiry questions is, well, who does that I am refer to? Or, sometimes we say it, who are you? Or what is this? And so you can do that right now. That's a beautiful thing about Dharma practice. Like, it's always available in the present moment. So probably you have some sense of I am. Maybe there's a thought. I am not liking this investigation of I am. Or I am sitting here. Sometimes we just have a sense of I am, like through our physical experience of the body. And so just see if you can contact a sense of I am. Dharma practice doesn't say like there is no I am, you should not have that experience. We have that experience. Dharma practice is just saying, like, what is that? What is that referring to? What's your experience of that? So, you're not doing something wrong because you feel a sense of I am. We all do, I do. And so we're just like, okay, can you contact that now? If you're feeling, how are you feeling that sense? And then like, what happens when you look? Is it a sensation? Is it a thought? Is it a feeling? Is it some combination? Is there an image? And if you feel like you contact or connect with something, some sensation, feeling, emotion, image, or conglomerate of things, then the next step is, well, what are those sensations, thoughts, feelings made of? Like really, like what is this I am? And what happens when you peer into it or look into it? Part of what usually happens as we begin to look with a non-judgmental awareness and genuine curiosity, which we can't always turn those things on, but like those are often necessary ingredients for this kind of inquiry. What we usually begin to see is this I am, it's flimsy in a way. So we use the word ungraspable. Like we feel it, we sense it, but we can't quite like pin it down. Can't quite grab a hold of it and say, yes, it's right here. It's like in my left shoulder and I can just keep reliably finding it there. That's not usually what happens. It's like we look and then it kind of pulls back or disappears, or maybe we feel it somewhere else. Another thought appears and there it is. So we say like, oh, like it's ungraspable, or it changes, or there's a spaciousness to it when we look. Right? Sometimes people look and there's just like nothing happens. It's just like space, or they feel like they return back to just this. It's like, yeah, it's flowing. It's here. It's only here in the moment of it's happening. Or there's like a non-referential quality about it. So the encouragement in this kind of inquiry practice, which is very much a practice that's deeply part of the Zen tradition, is to look into this assumption when it arises and when you notice it. So we might not notice it all the time, but when you notice, oh, there it is, I'm saying I am, or I'm feeling the sense of I am, what is that? And then to see what happens in your experience. And this may feel a little awkward. Like often we don't do this in our normal lives. No one's like taught us this. When we started saying I am, no one said, well, who does that refer to? So it can feel awkward. This kind of inward turning, this turning our awareness like really back on itself. And it can feel like, well, nothing really happens. Am I doing this right? But that's like part of it. You're catching the slipperiness of the I am. And that's important, even if it feels weird or strange. These are actually profound experiences. I've quoted Naguma before in saying like it's so simple we don't even notice it, or it's so profound we can't quite take it in. Yes, like this practice really, those phrases really apply to this kind of inquiry. It's subtle. But this is where this analogy of dream is applicable. Saying like experience is dreamlike if you really look. All experience is like this. It's flimsy. It's here in the moment of its happening, and then it's already changing as you become aware of it. It's not unreal. It's just not real in the way that sometimes we think it is, because we just make these assumptions that, oh yeah, the I am just, it refers to me and me is me. And that's the bottom line. But when we look, it's like, oh, me is actually like spacious. There's, yeah. There's like an openness here. So that's part of what dream is referring to. It's referring to the insubstantiality of direct experience itself, the spaciousness. And really, like any word is imperfect. We can make some kind of concretization of what a dream is and then say, oh yeah, it's like that. And so that's part of, I shared this the first time I introduced the analogy of dream, but in Longchenpa's treatise called the Finding Comfort and Ease in Enchantment, which I really love that title, Finding Comfort and Ease in Enchantment, or Maya Yoga is the way that Keith Dowman translated or gave a title to that treatise. He has 8 analogies. And these are common analogies. You'll find them in other lists throughout the Buddhist tradition. Sometimes we use the word illusion, or like a reflection in water or in a mirror, or like a mirage. And then in Keith Dowman's translation of Maya Yoga, he uses two modern analogies, like a movie and like a hologram. So they're pointing to this insubstantiality. They're pointing to the openness of experience. I feel like dream is particularly evocative, and it shows up most in the teachings, especially in the Zen teachings. If we look through the chant book, you might find the word dream like 4 or 5 times throughout different chants. And so we've been exploring, using this phrase, this is a dream, or the question, am I dreaming, as a way in, as a way to practice seeing through the assumptions or reactions that we paste onto reality, or to practice seeing the insubstantiality of thoughts, of feelings, of emotions, of reactions. And this phrase or this question or this inquiry, it's like a koan. And just like working with a koan, it's like we're not holding it really tight and carrying it around and like zapping everything and saying, dream, 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 this is all a dream, especially like as a way of trying to get rid of the things we don't like. We can kind of turn anything into that, but that's not the spirit of a koan. It's like, oh, this is a living inquiry. This is a living question. So it's like part of working with a koan is like we need to find our own curiosity with it, even just a little bit. And like, let it like be a little playful even, especially. So, for example, like maybe you're standing in line. I feel like as modern humans, we have a lot of experience with waiting. Like that's part of the gestalt of being human in this era. So maybe you're standing in line somewhere, or maybe you're driving and there's a traffic jam, and frustration is building. Your mind starts thinking about all the things you need to do, or how you're going to be late to where you're going, or how you just don't want this experience to be happening. And you can, like, in that moment, if you remember, entertain, well, what if this is a dream? And just like drop that into the mind stream. When we're dreaming, we're usually present. Somebody pointed that out the other day. Said when I'm dreaming, like I'm not usually thinking about something else that I have to do. Even if it's like a worry dream, we're usually just present with the worry about like that's happening in the worry dream. We're not usually like, oh, let me cut off this worry and I have another worry I have to get to. So that's one aspect of dream. Like we're usually present. So you might notice as you like drop this in this fantasy line that we have right now that we're waiting in, you might notice like, oh, if this is a dream, sometimes like becoming lucid in a dream, but the dream continues. But once we're lucid, we're like some code's been cracked. We're no longer totally bought into like that this dream is happening to us and we need to like go along with it. It's like, oh, there's a little bit more space. There's a little bit more possibility. We can be curious about the other people in the dream. We can be curious about the landscape. So similarly, like that's one thing I've found with working with this koan, working with this inquiry of this is a dream or am I dreaming, is like when I put that in to my life, I become more curious or open, or things become a little bit more possible. I've been doing it when I go on walks. And like today I did it, and I was walking by a creek, and by the creek, like the ground is full of these like river rocks. And like I asked, oh, am I dreaming? And I just had this like sense that, oh, the rocks might start talking to me, because that's possible in a dream. And so it's just like it added an element of like playfulness or possibility and deep presence. Like if a rock's gonna start talking to me, like I'm there for it in a different kind of way than when I'm just kind of walking, telling myself whatever story I'm telling myself or rehashing the day. So like, a vividness of presence became accessible. So it's another aspect of this koan is it can like act as like kind of a little wake up, like waking us up out of whatever we're telling ourselves in our minds and like bringing us back to this, what's happening here and what's possible here that maybe we didn't see when we were, too busy complaining or being frustrated or, lost in our own thoughts. What does, if you're in this line and you're waiting and you entertain that it's a dream, well, what does waiting feel like in a dream? Like you get that possibility to explore that. Or what does frustration feel like in a dream? So you might notice when you ask yourself that question, like what happens? Like I shared, I thought the rocks might start talking to me. But you might notice like, oh, what are you drawn to when you ask yourself that question? Like what becomes available or possible that maybe wasn't possible even seconds ago? Another way I've been playing with this question is, if this were a dream and I'm remembering it in the morning after having the dream, what parts of it would I record or share or remember? So if like this right now, this Dharma talk, or you sitting in your room listening to this Dharma talk, if this were a dream, like what, you might come awake to like, this is a dream, and like what parts of it might you share? So that's another way I've been playing with it, like kind of wakes up this, oh my gosh, this is a dream I really want to remember. Sometimes I have that level of lucidity in a dream. I'm like, this is a dream. I'm not waking up yet, but I really want to remember this part when I do wake up. I want to read a little bit from Pema Chodron. I've been sharing this book. It's called Start Where You Are. It's one of Pema Chodron's earlier books, and she is talking about the Lojong slogans, which are practices in the Tibetan tradition for generating or practicing with generating bodhicitta. And dream, this slogan around dream, it said, regard all dharmas as dreams, or she says, regard everything as a dream, is the first of the absolute bodhicitta slogan. So it's really the first of the whole Lojong slogan practice. And there are like over 60 slogans, most of them about relative bodhicitta, but there are 5 about cultivating absolute bodhicitta. And I want to read, I haven't done this yet, I want to read just a little bit about what she says about regarding all dharmas as dream, or regarding everything as a dream. She says, life is a dream. Death is also a dream. For that matter, waking is a dream and sleeping is a dream. Another way to put this is, every situation is a passing memory. So then she goes on, the walk that you took this morning is a memory. Every situation is a passing memory. As we live our lives, there is a lot of repetition. So many mornings greeted, so many meals eaten, So many drives to work and drives home, so many times spent with our friends and family again and again, over and over. All of these situations bring up irritation, lust, anger, sadness, all kinds of things about the people with whom we work or live or stand in line or fight traffic. So much will happen in the same way over and over again. It's all an excellent opportunity to connect with this sense of how each situation is like a passing memory. Just a few moments ago, she's talking to people who are doing a retreat with her. So she says, you are standing in the hall, and now it is a memory. But then it was so real. Now I'm talking, and what I've just said has already passed. It is said that with these slogans that they're pointing to absolute truth, openness. One should not say, oh yes, I know, but that one should just allow a mental gap to open and wonder, could it be? Am I dreaming? Pinch yourself. Dreams are just as convincing as waking reality. You could begin to contemplate the fact that perhaps things are not as solid or as reliable as they seem. And then she goes on to tell a story about somebody who was one of her students, and that happened for him kind of spontaneously. He was up at a high altitude on a solo retreat, solo practice in the mountains, solo backpacking retreat. And he just had this experience spontaneously of like feeling like the mountain was like he was in a dream and the mountain was a dream, and he was writing a letter and that the letter was a dream, and he was eating his food and that felt like a dream. And he said he just felt this kind of profound openness and possibility. Like, oh, this is a dream. And it still felt like it felt sacred to him in the moment it was happening. But it felt light as well. There was like a lightness and openness. And Pema Chodron says openness is one of the qualities of bodhicitta. So it's, this practice of regarding everything as a dream or dropping in that phrase, this is a dream, from time to time throughout your day. It's a practice of opening to the spaciousness of being, or of starting to like experience openness. And we can experience openness in so many different ways. It's not just like, oh, the sky and everything else goes away. It's like, oh, the openness of a possibility, the openness of an open mind that can hold multiple truths, that can be with this experience unfolding and entertain that. Oh, and it also has this dreamlike quality. Openness also like speaks to being less identified with the suffering-making mind. I've been thinking about it. I love Longchenpa's phrase of finding comfort and ease in enchantment, and how dream practice can re-enchant our lives, or bring us closer to the sacredness of life. Bring a sense of wonderment. Like, is wonderment possible even while we're waiting in line, or even in traffic, or even while we're watching the news? We could take this a whole nother level that might be helpful. What if we entertained that President Trump was a figure in your dream? Or the person in your life that you're feeling averse to or on edge around. Like, what if even they were a figure in your dream? In dream work, like koan practice, we entertain that every character in the dream or in even the landscape is us. And part of the practice is like inhabiting their perspective. So we do that in koans by being the questioner and then being the teacher if it's one of those questions, and then being like whatever is evoked in the koan. So last week we were talking about the koan where Nan Chuan says to a student, people see this flower as if they're in a dream. So you would work with like dream, but you would also work with being the flower and then being the one asking the question and the one answering. So similarly, like we can do this in the dream of our life. If we notice, and this is very interesting to do, to notice like, where are the people or the situations where there's like a sense of this really isn't me. Like I do not have anything in common with that person, or what they're believing or what they're saying is so not me. Or we feel a lot of judgment towards, or we despise. Like we can really hit resistance in trying to take a perspective of someone, especially if we like regard them as evil or wrong, or like they're causing a lot of harm. So you could say like this is a way that dream work can be a kind of shadow work. It's helping us see what we might deny or hate or other in other people. And so probably we do that in ourselves as well. Last week, I shared that koan. It's called Nan Chuan's As If in a Dream. And Nan Chuan says people see this flower as if in a dream, but the questioner at first asked or said, actually the questioner doesn't ask a question, they just say somebody else's lines. And so they say, all beings have the same root. All beings and myself share the same body. And then they say, isn't this marvelous? Which if we were working with the koan, we would work with that line too. Like, isn't that something interesting to carry around? Say to ourselves, like after something happens, whatever it is, isn't that marvelous? As like a dreamlike quality to life or surreal quality to life. So when we meet impossible people in our lives, people that maybe we feel challenged by or threatened by, this koan, and this is like a core teaching in the Dharma, is an invitation to like, can we see that they too are part of this one body of awakened nature, that they too are Buddhas, and that we too possess the capacity for whatever we're judging them for harm, for abuse of power, that we too can be a bully sometimes, or do whatever we are, whatever it is that we're judging them for. And so when we know this capacity in ourselves, and sometimes it's hard to access, but when we know this capacity in ourselves even a little bit, or just even the potential, bodhicitta or compassion can arise for others as well as openness. Oh, another teaching that feels similar to this is regard all beings and situations as your teacher. I've been thinking about this, like the world is psychoactive. We can take in and do often reinforce our own reactivity. We're telling ourselves certain stories about who we are, what is happening, and we're reinforcing it. And that's psychoactive. And so the Dharma is psychoactive as well. Like we can use these koans or these slogans as a way of, changing our minds, really like literally changing our perspective or allowing, something new to come in. So we can, I'd like to just pause here and come back to this is a dream. And what if we saw this as a dream? Or regarded the challenging people or situations in our lives as dharma teachings, or as, teachers trying to help us wake up, help us realize interconnection, or to open our hearts and minds. Well, that's like the real potential of these kinds of practices. They're like practices specifically for off the cushion, although as you saw, like we can drop that koan or that question, is this a dream, into our meditation too, and that can be interesting. But yeah, they're like meant to be lived in and played with and not held too tightly. But actually, like, if we can bring in some curiosity and just like let ourselves work with them or be worked on by them, it's very interesting.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Community of Oregon podcast, and thank you for your practice. New episodes air every week. Please consider making a donation at zendust.org. Your support supports us.